Joe Rogan is not easy to shock. He's interviewed war veterans, former CIA operatives, neuroscientists, criminals, comedians who've seen the absolute worst of humanity and learned to laugh at it. He does not rattle easily. But there is a podcast episode, and most people missed it, where you can watch Joe Rogan go from skeptic to silent to genuinely shaken. And it happens in real time, not because someone told him something wild, because he started reading the actual documents himself.
It's the people that are like really interested in reading all the email. When you get indicted for sex trafficking and then you order 6 drums of sulfuric acid right away, are you really worried about your reverse osmosis plant right after you get indicted? I feel like you're going to jail.
If it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck.
How many of the kids that are being human trafficked actually get discovered? We're finding this 5 here, 6 here.
But how many actually are there?
How many of them actually are there?
3 clips, 1 arc. One man slowly realizing that the story he thought was too crazy to be real is real. This is that story. Stay with me. You have to understand where Joe Rogan starts in this conversation. He is not a conspiracy theorist. He actively resists that label. He spent years being careful about the line between asking questions and pushing narratives. And he knows exactly what happens to credibility when you cross it. So when the Epstein files start circulating, when researchers and commentators start flagging coded language in emails, unusual purchase orders, suspicious associations, Rogan's first instinct is the healthy one. Pump the brakes.
Not everything you don't understand adds up to the worst possible thing it could be.
That's a reasonable position. That's the position most rational people start from, and he applies it consistently. When the sulfuric acid order comes up, 6 55-gallon drums purchased shortly after Epstein's indictment. Rogan actually goes looking for the innocent explanation. Does Epstein have a desalination plant on the island? Yes, apparently he does. Sulfuric acid is used in reverse osmosis water treatment maintenance. Is it possible the order is routine? Rogan entertains it.
That's why I just go with grain of salt. This is just a plausible answer. I don't know that it is the answer. It could even be wrong.
This is what intellectual honesty looks like. You find the counter-explanation. You hold it seriously. You don't dismiss it just because it's inconvenient. But then the counter-explanation starts to crack, not because someone argues it away, because the context surrounding it becomes impossible to ignore. And that's when the shift begins. Here is the specific moment documented on tape where Joe Rogan's reasonable skepticism runs out of road. It's not dramatic. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens the way most real realizations happen, quietly in the space between one sentence and the next. The sulfuric acid has an explanation. Fine. But then someone asks the question that the explanation doesn't cover.
Where are the purchase orders for all of that sulfuric acid before that? Oh, no, I just want to put sulfuric acid into my swimming pool. Muriatic acid.
Well, that's the question. Was there orders for sulfuric acid before this? If they do have a water treatment plant, how does sulfuric acid play into water treatment?
That's the crack. Because the explanation only works if the purchase is routine. If it's routine, there should be a pattern of similar orders going back years. If the island has always had a desalination plant, there should always have been sulfuric acid orders. But the order appears right after the indictment, not before, not routinely after. And Rogan, the skeptic, the guy who told everyone not to jump to the worst conclusion, lands here.
It looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck. It's probably a duck.
It's probably a duck.
5 words. And in those 5 words, you can hear exactly what just happened inside his head. The rational explanation required a lot of assumptions. The darker reading required almost none. And once that crack appears, once Rogan's skepticism hits its ceiling, everything else he reads lands differently. Here is where it gets specific. Because the sulfuric acid is one data point, but the emails, the actual written communications between Epstein and his associates, now part of the public court record, are dozens of data points, and they all point in the same direction. The word that keeps appearing in contexts that defy any normal reading is jerky. Beef jerky stored cold, walked to specific people, sent overnight, rationed carefully, kept in downstairs freezers with someone asking to learn how to make it. Discussed in the same breath as visits to Little St. James Islands.
JoJo is here and we'll walk the jerky over to Jeffrey. We'll walk the jerky over to Jeffrey. Why would jerky walk around? Why would it do that? There is one bag of beef jerky in the fridge. Please get it. Also, Blank has more at her place. Please get it from her as well. I suppose it needs to be in a cold, insulated bag. He said he has 6 bags of it in the downstairs freezer. Why would you freeze jerky? Steve needs a 6 to 8 ounce portion of jerky.
Now read those 3 clips back. Why does jerky need to be walked to someone? Why does it need a cold insulated bag? Why is it stored in a downstairs freezer in 6-bag quantities and rationed in specific ounce portions? Rogan's podcast discussion circles this exact question, trying to make beef jerky make sense as beef jerky, and it keeps failing.
No, this is clearly a code with walking over beef jerky.
And this isn't just Rogan's gut reaction. A sitting United States Congresswoman, after reviewing the unredacted files, said this on the congressional record.
Directly at the emails that have been widely circulated pertaining to the age 11, and I have it written down on my notes, the permission to kill email, the Snow White, the littlest girl was naughty, etc., and some of them pertaining to, jerky, whatever that is. Yeah.
And so, and so just quick follow. What is jerky? Like, what is that exactly?
I think that's the question. I don't know if it's like, and again, like going into specifically just based on what this is, I don't know.
Code
the
word.
Context is
it has to be a code word. Nobody
it's
talks about
word,
jerky like this.
Weird. Yeah, it's a code word.
A member of Congress on the record saying what Rogan is saying on his podcast. Nobody talks about jerky like this. At this point in the conversation, Rogan is asking the question that every person who goes down this road eventually asks. How does a network of this scale operate for this long without being exposed? How do you coordinate something this complex without leaving a trail that law enforcement can follow? And the answer, documented, not theoretical, is that the methods were specifically engineered to be invisible.
They don't hit send, but they have the password for multiple emails, and they'll just go in, get the message, and then never open or close it, so it's impossible basically to track. It's just like a draft.
Oh, I see. And so other people have the login to the account,
password, and
they check it out through the draft.
No sent message, no received message, no metadata trail, no record of transmission, just a draft sitting in a shared inbox existing without ever moving. This method has been documented in terrorism investigations and organized crime cases across the world. It exploits a specific gap in how electronic surveillance is legally structured. Surveillance tools track sent and received communications. A draft that never moves is functionally invisible to standard monitoring. Layer that on top of coded language in any emails that are sent. Layer that on top of private islands with no public surveillance infrastructure. Layer that on top of non-disclosure agreements enforced by the most expensive legal teams money can buy. And you get a system that was built from the ground up to leave no trace.
How are these people communicating? Are they doing it through the dark web? Are they doing it through forums? Are they using code? Like, how are they doing this?
I've heard all the above.
The answer is all of the above and more. And Rogan, who started this conversation trying to find the innocent explanation for sulfuric acid, is now sitting with the full weight of what a deliberately invisible network actually looks like. Everything up to this point has been about the network, the architecture, the methods, the documents. Now it becomes about the children. And this is the moment, the specific documented moment where Joe Rogan's tone changes completely. His team pulls a U.S. Marshals report during the podcast. Real federal reporting, not fringe websites, not anonymous sources. The U.S. Marshal Service. 72 missing children rescued across Indiana, Iowa, Ohio, and Georgia in just a few weeks. And Rogan's reaction isn't outrage. Not at first. It's something quieter and more devastating than outrage.
We were talking about on the podcast the 39 or 35 kids that were rescued in Georgia.
Yeah.
And it was a blip in the news. But meanwhile, I saw 1,000 articles on how mean Ellen is.
How that one word, how is 72 children a blip? How does that not lead every broadcast? How does a story about rescued children get buried under celebrity gossip? And then his producer pulls the actual numbers apart because not all 72 are confirmed trafficking cases. Some are runaways, some are abuse situations. The U.S. Marshals are collecting all missing and endangered children under one operation. But 1 in 4 of the children recovered are believed to be part of human trafficking situations.
It's 1 in 4 of these kids, so if it was 25 kids picked up, that 6 or 7 of them were human trafficking. The other 20 or so are like kids that ran away or kids that were being abused. And they found them because they were missing.
How many of the kids that are being human trafficked actually get discovered? We're finding this 5 here, 6 here. These,
but how many actually are there?
How many of them actually are there? Do we know? We don't, right?
We don't know. The cases that get found and reported, 72 here, 35 there. Those are not the full picture. Those are fragments, edges of something that has never been fully mapped. Because for every child that gets recovered, how many don't? We don't know. And that phrase, "we don't know," lands on Rogan differently now than it would have at the start of this conversation, because now he knows about the coded emails. He knows about the draft folder communication system. He knows about the sulfuric acid. He knows about the island. He knows what a deliberately invisible network looks like, which means the children that aren't being found on purpose. 72 children in a federal operation across 4 states. A blip. Now scale it up. Because there is a number, a documented federally reported number that makes 72 look small. And it is a number that Rogan's conversation never fully reaches. But that the documents surrounding this story make unavoidable. 85,000. That is the approximate number of unaccompanied minors who crossed the U.S. southern border in a recent 2-year period and were released into the country with no confirmed verified safe destination on record. Not kidnapped, not confirmed, trafficked, released into the hands of sponsors who were not DNA verified, not background checked, not vetted beyond basic paperwork. Tim Ballard, the federal agent who spent a decade specifically tracking child exploitation on the southern border, described what that number means in operational terms.
So when you have 85,000 unaccompanied minors showing up in the last 2 years, being let into the country without the sponsor being vetted, DNA checked, background checked, I call it the economy of pedophilia. The United States, we're the demand. 85,000 children, thousands of them are under 5 years old.
Under 5 years old, thousands of them, no verified destination. And Jim Caviezel, who spent years researching this world while preparing for Sound of Freedom, put it the way Rogan's own instinct was already going.
Last year and disappeared. Where did they disappear to?
Where did they disappear to? Rogan's podcast discussed the Houston angle, how the city has become one of the primary hubs for child trafficking in the United States, specifically because of its proximity to port infrastructure and its position as a major transit point for people entering the country.
If you go to hubs of the world like Houston, you go to coastal cities where people are actually bringing people into the country, that's exactly where you're going to find a lot of it.
Port cities, cargo routes, geographic choke points that are also the exact same infrastructure used for every other form of smuggling. The network doesn't need to be completely invisible everywhere. It just needs to be invisible enough hidden inside the volume of legitimate movement that the signal gets lost in the noise. And 85,000 unverified children released into an unmonitored system is a lot of noise to hide inside. By this point in the conversation, Joe Rogan isn't processing anymore. He's furious, not in a loud way, in the quiet, controlled way that's actually more unsettling because it means the emotion has moved past the surface and settled somewhere deeper. And his fury has a specific target. Not the traffickers, not even Epstein, the media.
Why is this not a bigger story in mainstream news? This is one of the things that concerns me. I don't understand why you're not seeing this on CNN. This is
every day.
Yeah.
Why aren't we seeing this every day on CNN?
Right. That story right there should be leading on
everything.
Primetime news.
Everything.
72 children rescued. A blip. 85,000 unaccounted for, barely covered. Epstein files unsealed, buried under other headlines, and Rogan zeroes in on the mechanism. Not just the failure of coverage, but the active distortion that replaces it.
And then we lose track of who the real enemy is.
Yeah, that's a real enemy, not Ellen.
That's dangerous, right? Not
Ellen being mean to her assistant. Just fuck. Just what we care about is so bizarre. Yeah. It's such a symptom of how sick we are as a culture, and that our priorities are so skewed, and that this is sort of accentuated by our addiction to social media.
That is the mechanism laid bare. The public's attention is finite. Every hour spent on celebrity gossip on who was mean to whom on a TV set is an hour not spent on 85,000 missing children, on coded emails in federal court documents, on U.S. Marshals operations that recover dozens of trafficked kids and get 3 paragraphs in a local news brief. It's not just that the media fails to cover the story. It's that the media actively fills the space where that story should be with noise that keeps the public distracted, outraged about the wrong things, and emotionally exhausted before the important questions even get asked. Tim Ballard, who watched this from inside the federal government for 12 years, named both explanations when Jordan Peterson pressed him on it.
Not very much has been, attention has been given by mainstream media. Oftentimes it's more innocent than cynical, perhaps, where it's just, this is too dark. I don't want to expose our audience to this horrific.
The charitable version. Too dark, too uncomfortable.
So there is a more cynical answer to your question, which may be there's people that don't want this exposed because they're involved in it.
And Rogan, who started this conversation looking for innocent explanations, has now run out of road for the charitable version too. Here's something that ties everything together in a way that Rogan instinctively understands. Sound of Freedom, a film about a real federal agent rescuing trafficked children, was completed and then sat on a shelf for 5 years because no major studio would release it. A film about saving children blocked for 5 years.
Everyone was told, from Rupert Murdoch, from Fox, to every studio, look, if you touch this thing, you will be out, you will be done. You'll be finished in 3 years.
Why does that matter to Rogan specifically? Because Rogan has spent his entire podcast career fighting the same battle on a smaller scale. The battle to have conversations that powerful institutions don't want had. He's been removed from platforms. He's been pressured. He's watched guests get blacklisted for what they said on his show. He knows what institutional suppression looks like up close. And when he sees a film about child trafficking get actively blocked by every major studio, the same studios whose parent companies own the networks not covering the story, the pattern becomes visible in a way it can't be unseen.
It's an 8-armed octopus, and if you take just out, that arm will grow back. You have to take the head.
Yeah, it's terrifying. It's terrifying for fathers and mothers.
Yeah, it is.
It's like the fact that, or brothers and sisters, the fact that it could be someone close to you.
Yeah. For me, I have 9 children. At the time, I left the government at 6. And so I can always identify the age of a child with one of my own children. And what my mind was almost automatically doing is I would superimpose my own children's faces and persons onto these children. And that led to the PTSD.
That's the price of looking directly at this. That's what happens when you stop treating it as an abstract problem and start treating it as what it is, children. Specific children with faces that look like faces you know. And Joe Rogan, who spent the first part of this conversation trying to find the innocent explanation for sulfuric acid, is now a father sitting with the knowledge that 85,000 children are unaccounted for. You will be finished in 3 years. And what Joe Rogan realizes, what you can hear happening in real time across these conversations, is that the story isn't one thing. It's the accumulation. It's the pattern. It's the fact that every single piece of evidence, every single documented fact, every single court record points in the same direction.
Every single documented fact.
Well, you don't see it on
court
CNN. You're not seeing it as
direction.
like mainstream television news where it's a big subject that gets discussed, that we have a giant problem like this in this country.
Not being discussed by design or by failure. The result is the same. Children are missing. Networks are operating. And the conversation that should be happening everywhere is happening on podcast.
We, as a culture, have got to work with local law enforcement to start to curb this thing, because that's where the rubber meets the road.
That's Rogan's conclusion. Not a conspiracy, not a prediction of mass arrests, not a divine reckoning, something much more grounded and much more urgent than any of that. All of us have to start paying attention to the local news stories that get 3 paragraphs, to the U.S. Marshals reports that get buried, to the court documents that are sitting in public record right now, available to anyone who wants to read them.
We don't
Just
know.
the fact that it's a real thing is spooky as fuck.
It is. It's dangerous.
Yeah, it's terrifying. It's terrifying for fathers and mothers. And,
Yeah, it is.
It's like the fact that, or brothers and sisters, the fact that it could be someone close to you.
Yes.
Joe Rogan went into this conversation looking for innocent explanations. He came out the other side knowing something he can't unknow. Now so do you. The Epstein files are public record. Read them. The flight logs are public record. Read them. The U.S. Marshals rescue operations are reported. Look them up. The congressional testimony about coded emails is on the record. Watch it. None of this is hidden. It is sitting in the open.